You're saying now you weren't part of the drug organization run by Tommy Egan, street name Ghost?
Tommy Egan? Who that?
My man. We straight, Tubit. You keep your head up in there.
Now, not too long ago, Gary Lennon did an interview with the TV Insider, and he spoke about a blast from the past. He spoke about connections, crossovers, and how he loves the idea of dropping breadcrumbs where characters can then cross over into other TV shows. He mentioned that Tommy's past will catch up with him one way or another. In the Power universe, we really love the idea of dropping breadcrumbs in shows and then having those breadcrumbs arise and lead to bigger storylines in one of our other shows. I love the actors that we worked with, and I like bringing them back and giving them something else to do in a very surprising yet inevitable turn. So yes, you will see familiar faces. And this is a quote I really wanted to dig a little deeper on and have a look at a few different angles where they could give us a blast from the past, which characters could turn up in not just for season 3, but also in future spin-offs, because Gary Lennon is also in charge of Power Legacy. Certain characters that have storylines which aren't finished, that have ties with Tommy Egan from back in Power, Power Book 2 Ghost, or maybe even in Force that could continue on into Legacy, which familiar faces could we actually see? That's the topic of this particular breakdown, and as always, I have broken each section and characters down into chapters because there are a lot that we are going to be running through, so stick with this video right through to the very end, because it will open your eyes to various different perspectives that we could see playing out going forward either in Power Book 4 Season 3 or in Power Legacy. With that being said, number 1, Law Enforcement. Now, law enforcement is always a great way and a clever way to tie the world of Power together. In a moment we're going to be talking about Blanca Rodriguez, everyone's favourite character from Power. But we're also going to be speaking about Jenny Sullivan and also Agent Medina. But during Power Book 2 Ghost Season 3 or more towards 4 Season 2, I mentioned how they could have tied Cooper Saxe into the wider storyline of Power Book 4 Force. From a timeline perspective, he may have been killed off in Season 3 of Ghost, but it didn't necessarily mean he was dead in the timeline of 4 Season 2. I created a theory at the time just before 4 Season 2 that just made so much sense, where Cooper Saxe may have found out that Tommy Egan was alive in Chicago, how he would have stumbled upon these images that were taken of Tommy back in Season 1 of Force in Chicago, how he could have created an entire folder of evidence, investigations, him doing research off the books, because we all know how corrupt law enforcement were back in Power. They were never afraid to bend the law when it suited them. How he could have had all this evidence on this USB drive, but before he could act on the information, he was then killed. Why would he have then left the USB drive for someone like Junior Valdez? Because Tommy Egan was the one who killed his aunt, Angela Valdez, and maybe Saxe thought he could maybe bring him to justice along with Tariq St. Patrick. Now, had this played out, it would have been such a great way to close off Cooper Saxe's storyline, with him finding out that Tommy Egan was alive, just his reaction, because back in Season 1, Episode 10 of Ghost, he believes that Tommy Egan kind of just blew up in flames in this crash. But after finding out Tommy Egan's alive, being unable to do anything with the information because he was then killed, which was actually a huge theme across Power. Law enforcement always had pretty much 99 pieces of the puzzle together, but there was always just that missing one. I do think they missed a huge opportunity with Cooper Saxe, because that crossover or investigation could have been such a great way to kind of continue tying the shows together, but also having the final touch on Cooper Saxe's story arc, because I do think his death did kind of end up being a bit lackluster. However, going forward, there are 3 characters who could kind of still cross over, something we have actually seen before.
They were called the 4 Horsemen.
Ooh, scary.
I want to move on it.
So let the Chicago office pick it up.
I really think something big is happening.
You can keep an eye on it, but I need you here focused for now.
Jenny Sullivan bumped into Agent Medina at the end of 4 Season 1, and Blanca Rodriguez also mentioned how there was a massacre she wanted to investigate, which involved the 4 Horsemen. They were the Irish guys that Walter Flynn brought in to deal with Tommy Egan. Now at the time, Agent Medina mentioned that he needed her in New York, but I do wonder if this is one of the breadcrumbs Gary Lennon could actually be talking about. If you're talking about characters that have history very similar to Cooper Saxe in terms of Power, in terms of the St. Patricks and Tommy Egan, then look no further than Blanca Rodriguez and also Agent Medina. I mentioned I would have loved to have seen the look on Cooper Saxe's face had he found out that Tommy Egan was alive. Well, the same could actually be said about Blanca Rodriguez and also Agent Medina. She's someone who also probably believes that Tommy Egan's dead based on what happened at the end of Ghost Season 1. I'm not sure how they tie things together. We've already seen her interested in pursuing the 4 Horsemen's case in Chicago, which again was knocked back by Agent Medina, but it could be something else that drops onto a desk that makes her think, wait, hold up a sec, I have to show this to Agent Medina. And with Medina, we all know the history between him and Tommy Egan, with the Felipe Lobos task force back in seasons 1, 2 and 3. Tommy was on their radar from way back then. So, Blanca Rodriguez and Agent Medina, they have a long-standing history and connection with Tommy Egan. There's a lot they can still do by tying them into a crossover. And well, those breadcrumbs have been there for many years across the world of power, not just with what we saw at the end of 4 Season 1. Now the other character in the space of law enforcement is Jenny Sullivan.
Jenny abandoned ship to go chase mob guys.
Back in 401 of Ghost, Jenny Sullivan was mentioned, and Blanca Rodriguez told us that she's gone to chase mob bosses. We don't know where she's gone, we don't actually know who she's chasing, what investigations she's currently conducting in the world of power, but she is also another character to definitely keep in mind, not just in 4 Season 3 but also for Power Legacy, and the same also goes for Blanca Rodriguez and Agent Medina. You do get the sense that Stacey Marks will be probably coming to the end of her time at the end of 4 Season 3 in terms of her role in the world of power. She seems very obsessed in catching Tommy Egan, and I do think consequences will probably be coming her way. And I highly doubt if Tommy Egan is caught. If there is trouble with any kind of law enforcement, I highly doubt Stacey Marks is the one to kind of make Tommy Egan sweat. In fact, I don't think he ever has when it comes to law enforcement. The only time I can kind of think of when he may have thought, shit, they've actually got me here, is when he was arrested back in Season 2. But it's always a fun cat and mouse game between Tommy and law enforcement, and having characters like Blanca Rodriguez, Agent Medina, and Jenny Sullivan still alive in the world of power, if they were to hear the name Tariq St or Tommy Egan, they are going to want to catch them and finish what they started. So, a blast from the past, breadcrumbs that have been laid before, Blanca Rodriguez, Agent Medina, and Jenny Sullivan. Definitely keep those three in mind. Now, one of the most common things I used to hear in the power space, whether it be from tweets, my comment section, or just generally across social media platforms, is I miss Ghost. They need to bring Ghost back. It's not been the same since Ghost left, you know how it goes. I've read the same amongst other characters as well, but the one person who doesn't get mentioned much is Joe Proctor. It doesn't mean that he wasn't a fan favourite, because he definitely was, and I do think he definitely still is. Everybody loved Joe Proctor for who he was, what he did, how he helped Ghost and Tommy back in power, and in fact, I think that's probably the one kill which we all disagreed with when it came to Tommy's Christmas list. Remember how he delivered Angela and the Felipe Lobos task force a huge blow back in Season 2? The look on Angela's face was priceless when Proctor delivered that checkmate, which was the sketch of Tommy that was obtained from Isabella Ruiz, who was 14, a minor. There were a lot of those classic moments from Joe Proctor, but Davis MacLean filled that void of Joe Proctor so well in Power Book 2 Ghost. I never really heard many people mention, oh, Joe Proctor should still be around, where he would have dealt with this situation this way or that way. Because Method Man actually killed the role of Davis MacLean, it really did help fill that void of Joe Proctor that he left in the world of power when it came to having a criminal lawyer. Now going forward, just branching off the previous chapter with law enforcement, when you've got some legal troubles or trouble with the law, you do need a criminal lawyer if you get what I mean. Tommy does have Jenny Sue in force, but Davis MacLean could be someone to keep in mind going forward in Power Legacy. He got his law license back towards the end of Ghost Season 4. In a way, it was kind of a happy ending for Davis MacLean, and if they do actually film Power Legacy in New York, they are going to need a lawyer. And you can bet Tariq's probably going to say, I know just the guy. Having Davis MacLean back working with Tariq and also Tommy, now that's something I'd definitely be down for. If this show is in New York, then it's definitely on. If the show is somewhere like maybe Miami, LA, Atlanta, or wherever else, then it does become a little more tricky. So, Blast from the Past probably doesn't apply to Davis MacLean for 4 Season 3, but I did want to mention him just for the future for Power Legacy, if they were to have the show in New York. Now, we've spoken about Tariq countless of times before. For those who may not have seen my breakdowns or want a refresher, I will put the Tariq crossing over to Chicago theories and breakdowns down below in the description section of this particular video. But when you think about the St. Patrick's, this does also include Tasha. Blast from the past, breadcrumbs that have been left before in the world of power shows, familiar faces. Who could return that would stand by in Tommy's corner? Honestly, you can't think of many, but Tasha definitely is one. For those who may have been following my breakdowns over the past few weeks, know that I've been rewatching Power, and we do have to keep in mind that Tasha did keep Tommy's head above water in season 3. Tommy lost his mind for a moment, and the person who was actually keeping everything together was Tasha. I've noticed she does get a lot of hate across social media, but I am also a very big believer in the fact women are the backbone of most families. Now, I'm not saying Tasha was right with everything that she did, because she did make plenty of mistakes. Her not guiding or sticking by Ghost when he wanted to leave the game behind. Look how that worked out. I still think Ghost would probably have left her for Angela anyway, but Tasha was wrong. She was short-sighted at the beginning of Power. She was immature. So I'm not saying she always kept things together, but there were a few moments where she did, specifically for Tommy in season 3. There were also moments where Ghost needed Tasha's help. Lakeisha, the same goes for Tariq. In Power Book 2 Ghost, specifically in season 1, who did Tariq always call or turn to when he needed help? Who was on the other end of the phone, or who came to see him towards the end of season 3 to set him straight? Where there's Tariq and Tommy, there's always a chance that Tasha could show up. And I don't think her story is over just like Tommy and Tariq's aren't. So where there's Tariq, Tasha will always be there. But again, just like the Davis MacLean character, I'm not sure this blast from the past will specifically be in for season 3. Again, definitely a returning cameo appearance I can see happening in Power Legacy. So, moving on to the next. Hallucinations, visions, voices. We've seen Tommy having these before. In 4 season 2 we saw it twice. There was Liliana's voice in the opening episode, and then there was the hallucination scene of Holly Weaver. Now, a blast from the past and a familiar face could even be a vision, hallucination, or a kind of voiceover. We've spoken about the hallucination from Holly Weaver before, and also Liliana. Characters that he hasn't seen or spoke to that meant a lot to him is Lakeisha, Ghost, and Kanan. Now, we've spoken about the Ghost hallucination scene countless of times before. As much as I would love for it to happen, I think it probably won't happen anytime soon. But the other two, Lakeisha or Kanan. Now, I would love to see Tommy having a vision of Kanan. Towards the back end of Power, we saw Ghost speaking to Kanan. And if Tommy was in a sticky situation, maybe like Tariq was in Power Book 2 Ghost. I'm not saying Tommy needs to be in jail like Tariq was, but any kind of situation where he has his back against the wall, why not have him speak to Kanan? Why not have Tommy having a hallucination scene of Kanan? It definitely is something to keep in mind. A hallucination and a vision doesn't need to be in the form of Holly, Lakeisha, Liliana, or even Ghost. Kanan could actually be next. So that's just one to keep in mind. If Ghost can have a hallucination scene of Kanan, if Tariq can, not just in Power but also in Power Book 2 Ghost, then why can't Tommy see his former mentor? This blast from the past, a familiar face, could be a hallucination scene. And this Kanan vision could honestly be potentially in 4 season 3. But moving on to the next, Tubit. Now, one of the things that Tommy values the most in Power is loyalty. If you show Tommy loyalty, he'll give it back to you tenfold. Betray him, and you're going to end up like Spanky and a whole host of other characters. For Tubit, towards the back end of Power, he could have easily have spoken to Blanca Rodriguez and told her what she wanted to know about Tommy and also his organization. He'd been working directly under Tommy for a while, but even though he was inside, that's just not how he's built. He's a real street soldier who knows and sticks by the street code.
My man. We straight, Tubit. You keep your head up in there.
Now, since this phone call between Tommy and Tubit, a lot has happened. Tommy's dead in New York. Tubit then came out of jail in Book 2 Ghost, bullied Tariq for a while. He then went missing for a large portion of Book 2 Ghost, and barely had any minutes in Ghost Season 4. And a lot of us have been saying it's a missed opportunity with what they did, or actually what they didn't do with Tubit's character in the World of Power. Now, could that actually change in 4 Season 3? I personally don't think he's a character who'd actually return in Force. I just don't think he actually fits the vibe and mold of Chicago. And I also think it's way too late in the series anyway. I think there's also a big question of, does he even know Tommy's even alive and also in Chicago? How would that work from a storyline perspective? However, the same as the Davis MacLean scenario, if Power Legacy is in New York, then he is a character I really do hope they do begin to utilize. The history is here, just like Gary Lennon mentioned. He's a familiar face, he's worked with Tommy before, he's shown his loyalty to Tommy before, and he's also a character that would probably set Tubit straight when it came to this beef between him and Tariq. I know the writers and some of the showrunners do watch these breakdowns, and trust me, they're definitely aware of us guys talking about characters like Tubit or even Cristobal. He's also another character who's in a similar mold. Back in Power, he was arrested at the same time as Alicia Jimenez. But this was the last time we ever saw or heard about Cristobal. Is he still in jail? Is he out? Is he doing his thing in the streets? There's a lot they can actually do with Tubit and also Cristobal, because there's a lot of history here between the two characters. They never really got on back in power when they were working under Dre, so Cristobal falls under the same kind of category. If they have power legacy in New York, there's always the potential they can kind of reignite this fire with that particular storyline. The breadcrumbs are already there for that particular beef, and it wouldn't even take much to pour some petrol on the fire with this one. So, Tubit and Cristobal, let's wait and see. I can definitely see this being a power legacy thing or a short story arc in that particular series, if they do decide to bring Tommy back to New York. Now, after Kane uses Harry Potter invisibility cloak and disappeared without a trace, he left New York because he was a wanted man. On social media, Woody MacLean even teased that his character went to Atlanta, and there was a lot of hype. Kane's a character who I'd definitely love to see back in the world of power, but as a standalone spin-off, I'm not too sure. Can I see a cameo appearance in Power Origins or another Power show? No doubt. Could he be someone that rose to Chicago with Tariq? Again, I think that's probably unlikely. It would create a lot of hype, don't get it twisted, if Tommy does need shooters and in came characters like Tariq also with Kane, them working together coming to have Tommy's back. There was actually even a picture many years ago that Joseph Sikora posted with him standing next to Woody MacLean, and again, this actually sent social media into an absolute complete frenzy at the time. A lot of people thought if Tommy crosses over, he could actually meet Kane and Kane could actually join Tommy's organization. I do remember it like it was yesterday, it created a lot of chaos on social media. Now honestly, it really would be crazy. It would create a lot of hype if Kane was the one to be the familiar face who shows up. I personally just think it doesn't make that much sense from a storyline perspective. However, for Power Legacy as a one-off appearance, I can definitely see it. But for Season 3, as much as hype as it would create, it's probably unlikely. Now there are also a host of other characters. We've spoken about the Italians before, Elisa Marie, Aunt Dolores, Carlo Civello. Again, just like the Tariq crossover theories, I've been through these before and I will leave the link to these breakdowns down below in the description section. But there are also a lot of other characters like Cash. We all know how much Tommy cares about Cash. We even saw him go to visit him in Go Season 1. In terms of law enforcement, there was also John Mack. He apparently moved to DC. In the world of politics, there's Rashad Tate and Stephen Ott. In the world of business, there's also RSJ and Simon Stern. With these particular characters, I don't think they'll be the blast from the past as such in Season 3. I don't think they'd be familiar faces that we see anytime soon, but definitely characters to keep in mind not just for Power Legacy if it is in New York, but other spin-offs as well. I do feel like back in Go Season 3 and 4, they had so much more potential to tap into this storyline with RSJ. It did seem like he had a bit of history that he wasn't proud of, and they never really let that backstory kind of breathe. That's why Power Origins getting 18 episodes for Season 1, honestly it really is huge. They can let these types of storylines, backstories and story arcs cook. They can let them breathe. They can take their time and really flesh out all the finer details. With characters like RSJ, how can you do that in the span of a few episodes or a few scenes, especially with how kind of fast-paced Power Book 2 Ghost was? So these characters may not show up in Force, but they are definitely ones to keep in mind for other shows. But those are my extra thoughts on Gary Lennon's quotes about how Tommy's past will always catch up with him. I've previously given my thoughts on the Italians. In this particular breakdown, we've gone through a couple of new angles like law enforcement, a Kanan hallucination scene, that's also another new thought. So is Tasha, Davis MacLean, Tubit and Cristobal. I personally would love to see the Kanan hallucination, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they go down the law enforcement angle, and the familiar faces and the characters being characters like Blanca Rodriguez, Jenny Sullivan, Agent Medina. But as usual, the floor is now yours. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section, and as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.